33 patents approved. What's this mean then moving forward for the company? Like, how big was that announcement yesterday? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest TDR Psychedelic Exclusive. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Thanks for checking in. This industry right now, we had some compelling data back in September with regards to MAPS, but this whole industry is bleeding out right now, except for one stock that's completely separating itself from the competition. As we welcome back the CEO of Cybin, which trades under the ticker symbol CYBN on the New York Stock Exchange, Doug Drysdale. Good to see you. And I'm promoting you there off the top. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks for that recognition. It's been a good few weeks for us, and good to see Simon getting some better kind of, I think, understanding of the story. I think it's finally coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think it is. I remember a conversation that you and I had. We were talking about this before we started recording. 2 years ago, we were on a yacht in Miami doing some interviews, which was a great day, to say the least. And you said there will be one day this industry will no longer be like a little league soccer game where a whole pack just follows the ball and they start to separate themselves. But clearly, with the acquisition of Small Pharma, you have people like Steve Cohen purchasing, the announcement earlier this week with the patents. This industry looks right now that it's declining as far as a capital markets and investor perspective, but you're doing the complete opposite. But you must be happy with how you're kind of separating yourselves. Like other juggernauts like Atai and Compass are testing all-time lows right now, yet you've almost doubled in share price, like I said, in the last 45 days, which has a lot of investors' attention, right?
Yeah, like back then I said the same thing as I tell you now, which is we've always thought it was about two things: having molecules that are differentiated, so they're differentiated in some way from the competition and better for patients and providers,
Yep,
and then having strong IP. And we
that's what
focus
it
on
is.
we focus on IP from the beginning. Obviously, the acquisition of Small Pharma brings a lot of great IP with it as well. And now 33 granted patents, 170 patents pending. I mean, to be investable, you've got to have those two things.
33 patents approved. What's this mean then moving forward for the company? Like, how big was that announcement yesterday?
Look, I think when you look at the stock trading up today, and
Yep.
we issued 80 million shares for small pharma shareholders, that's a pretty good reaction. I think the market sees that the deal made a ton of sense. Collectively, we have, I think, the two best assets in the sector, both differentiated, both strong IP protection. And Small Pharma also brings with it phenomenal proof of concept data around DMT, with 40% of depressed patients in remission 6 months after one or two doses is quite remarkable. I don't think they really got
Very.
recognition for that.
Yeah, I think people, as they start to learn more and more about biotech, people within the industry have said small pharma had perhaps some of the best IP, if not the best IP within the actual industry. So this pretty much, I would say, solidifies you as the DMT leader within the industry. Would you not categorize that based on that acquisition?
Yeah, so obviously we thought DMT and deuterated DMT was a good idea from the outset, and we've been working on completely adjacent molecules to small pharma, so different analogs, different formulations, different indications even. So when you put all that together, there's real strength
Yeah.
in that combination. We've really consolidated, all those assets under one roof now, and created a clear runway, I think, going forward.
Yeah. So with the acquisition of Small Pharma, now it's complete, along with your in-house deuterated DMT program that is awaiting a phase 1 readout. You've acquired the most advanced external DMT clinical program with Small Pharma, as I said, which really has already produced gangbuster phase 2 readouts earlier this year. So walk us through the logic of acquiring, I guess, a DMT program and what sort of synergies can that bring to what you've already developed in-house?
So look, the small pharma data with DMT, SPL026, as I said, phenomenal. 40% of patients in remission 6 months after a couple of doses.
Yeah.
But DMT isn't ideal from a delivery point of view. You have to use an IV infusion pump. And we're not just talking about a drip here. It's a machine that needs to be programmed to infuse a certain amount of drug over a certain amount of time into the patient. So it requires expertise, a technician, trained staff, equipment. None of that exists in psychiatrists or therapists or psychologists' offices.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we could go down the path of DMT. We clearly know it works, but you're facing uphill a battle there trying to get adoption. What the deuteration does is that we're seeing it makes the molecule much more potent. So you see effects at much lower doses. When we take a low
Hmm.
dose, we can put that into a small volume injectable. So a subcutaneous injection or an intramuscular injection, we will figure out which is best. Thankfully, now with small pharma, we have both of those studies that will happen next year, and
Yeah.
then we can produce something that's not only easier to dose. I mean, you could give a subcutaneous injection, like a Wegovy type injection, anywhere in any office, very easy,
Yeah.
easy to dose, but also has strong IP around it. So it
Yeah.
just, I see the DMT data as fantastic proof of concept, but it's not a product, and
Right.
DMT is a product.
When you look at some of the clinical trials that they were conducting over in the UK, can you conduct some of the trials and use some of the CRO assets that small pharma used previously?
Yeah, like there's collectively a lot of data. Okay, so CYB4 is ready, IND ready for a phase 2 US study in quarter 1 next year. SPL028 is a little behind, actually, not quite IND ready, but still tons of toxicology data and safety data that we're collecting. And also the intramuscular study that's ongoing. So we'll have a really good idea within the next sort of 6 or 9 months or so whether subcutaneous or intramuscular is the right way to go. We'll also have from our phase 1 study a really good idea of dosing. So we've
Yeah.
done with our phase 1 CYB4 study. It's a really big study. We went through a slow 90-minute infusion. We tried a bolus plus infusion, and then just a bolus. And now we know that we can get a 40-minute experience from a single injection, and we know what the dose is, and we'll have all the safety data. So the combination is really very valuable.
Is that the future of mental health? 40 minutes, huh?
I think it's the best asset in the sector. Yeah. Imagine
Wow.
a single injection, easily dosed anywhere. Don't need to go to like a ketamine type clinic. And 40 minutes experience in and out of the doctor's office in an hour. And we already know it works.
Do you have any conversations with government officials on a lot of the trials that are going on, the research being conducted? Like there's been talks about MDMA possibly, like as we've discussed in the past in 2024. But when it comes to, say, some other compounds, I would think as an industry as a whole, like there's a lot of interest pertaining to the data that's being produced. But what are some of those conversations that you are having?
Like we're seeing a lot of confidence and a lot of support from FDA. I think the FDA guidelines were, I think, very industry friendly. You go back 2 3 years ago, and I don't know. I think the whole stigma around psychedelics was a lot higher, stronger than it is today. I think everyone I speak to now has heard about psychedelics and mental health. There just seems to
I
be
know.
this understanding, and when you see the data and you see that patients are rapidly improved after just one dose, it's just so compelling. It doesn't matter what the stigma is from the past. We have to find a way to get these treatments to market, and thankfully the FDA pathway is pretty clear. Once these treatments are approved, they're then deemed to be safe and effective, and then DEA is forced to reschedule. And so we've always said that the FDA pathway is the simplest route, rather than going state by state, lobby by lobby. It
Of
doesn't
course.
make any sense to do that.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it as a priority right now, I think I read on Bloomberg recently that homelessness is highest rate in New York City since the Great Depression. And even out west in the city of Vancouver, Canada, they've seen their homelessness increase by 32% since COVID. That's only 2, 3 years ago. So clearly,
Yeah.
the model is broke, and there needs to be solutions because health officials, whether in the U.S., Canada, or abroad, they're cratering right now. They need support. Like Professor Nutt, David Nutt, was telling me last week that there was more Americans lost last year alone to addiction and opioid usage than the Vietnam War, and that blew my mind away.
Yeah, it's right. It's right. The opioid crisis has taken more lives than the HIV/AIDS epidemic. This is incredible. Talking about homelessness in New York, I was speaking a little while ago to Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, about homelessness. And one of the things we were talking about is what about if we made psychedelic treatments freely available to homeless shelters
Wow.
to help break these homeless folks out of their depression, their mental health crisis, and at least try to create maybe a catalyst to help them fix the rest of their lives and the rest
Yeah.
of the issues. Obviously, homelessness is a really massively complex problem, not just about depression and addiction, but those play a major role in it, and I think we could really help.
Yeah. How long have you known the mayor of New York?
I met him about a year ago at an event. So.
So he's encouraged with what you're working on, I would think.
Yeah, obviously these are challenging situations when you've got experimental treatments. I think we're not likely to see anything maybe happen until we get an approval. But I think it's certainly another way to think about what value these could bring to the world,
Yeah, of course.
not just treating patients that are covered by insurance, but those folks that are less well off too.
Yeah, well, value is definitely something that investors like this week. As you said, 80 million shares issued to Cybin investors, yet you're trading up. So, needless to say, the market is liking this acquisition and the news from the patents this week. So, forward looking now, you're set to report Phase 1 DMT CYB004 and Phase 2 psilocybin CYB003 results before year end. We've talked about this a lot. The duo readouts are highly anticipated by investors and those following the space in general. So, how much value I guess, both trials provide, I guess, given that you've acquired like the most advanced DMT program in small pharma?
Yeah, so it's great to have that proof of concept with the small pharma DMT program. We still have to prove safety, of course, with CYB4. We still
Yep.
have to figure out what the dose is, and that's really been the value of the phase 1 program. And as I said, we're ready to go to phase 2 in generalized anxiety disorder with depression in quarter 1. CYB3 is getting to a really exciting point now. We've completed dosing completely in the phase 2 study in depression.
Yep.
And we'll have that data coming by year end. And our goal is to submit that to FDA and hopefully get an end of phase 2 meeting with them by about mid quarter 1 next year, I would say.
Okay.
And that'll put us in a position where we can get sign off on our phase 3 design and start recruiting patients for a phase 3 study by the end of quarter 1. So moving to that final phase of approval, final phase of development, I think that's a big milestone. And I'm excited when we can share the data. We started to see some insights into it already, on a blinded basis. But as we unlock the database now and analyze it, we're getting closer to being able to share that with the world.
We saw the news in the summer about Compass Pathways, the amount of money that they raised through a share purchase agreement with some pretty sophisticated investors. They're into a phase 3 now. So with what you're doing with CYB003, in some ways, like, is it competition in comparison to what Compass is doing? Do you view it that way, or is it completely separate?
Well, clearly there's some adjacent and overlap here, but we're developing CYB3 for major depressive disorder, and COMP360 is being developed for treatment-resistant depression. TRD is about a third of all depressed patients. So clearly the space, the number of patients that we're going trying to help is a lot greater. It's a larger market. And there's nothing stopping physicians using CYB3 for TRD patients as well. I can tell you that in our current depression study, we ended up with patients that are more at the severe end of the spectrum.
Right.
Just as Compass did in their study. It's very similar. And so if we show that we can help patients with severe depression with CYB3, then I think it has broad application in MDD and TRD.
If you look at your readouts in December, which are latest trial readouts, if they are promising, what do you think this does for your company, segue into 2024? Besides the obvious of just continue on with the trial. But I think investors, like, we look at this space right now, as I said off the top, it's been hit rather hard. But again, just a lot of the testimonials and the backings of some pretty high profile names like Steve Cohen purchasing 18.95 million shares. This really could be what the industry needs in a lot of ways, is compelling data from December. And you, like I said, being a leader within this space in 2024. Is that fair to say?
Look, I think so. I think it makes us highly investable. We've known for a long time that psilocybin can be effective, right? Depression, lots of academic studies, and Compass always had that sort of behind them. We, of course, have been developing a novel version, and so I think folks have been waiting. Okay, you changed the molecule. Does it still work? How does it work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it safe? And those are questions that we can now answer, a few weeks from now. And I think having a novel asset, a differentiated asset that has a fast onset in 15 minutes, peak effects that last about 2 hours. So likely the whole experience, the duration is maybe half the duration of psilocybin. That's
Yeah.
half the time in the clinic. That's half the staffing costs. I mean, those things are important, and a strong IP portfolio. So it takes a little while, I think, for people to get the story and to understand what it is exactly we've been doing. It's been clear to us from the outset: differentiated molecules with IP, and
Yeah.
I think people are catching on.
Shorter time too. I'm sure the insurance companies will like that as well, right?
Yeah, of course, and providers. I mean, these clinics and therapists and psychologists that will be using these treatments have to make a living, have to make a profit as well, so they can spend less time, less staff. That's good for them too.
Yeah. You surprised at all in how the industry as a whole has performed over the last, 30, 40 days? Like, again, Maps had some pretty groundbreaking stuff, but it all comes down to IP, I think, is the big issue right now. There was a story that was released actually earlier this week from the Wall Street Journal as they need a financial lifeline. But, if I was reading between the lines, I don't know anything, but it's like, are they having problems raising money? But do you find with the success that you've had in the past when it's raising money, what's the common question that gets asked more regularly than others? Like, is it all based on IP?
When you get to this stage, so that we're coming into phase 3, and the stage that Maps is at, where they're looking for significant investments, you start to have to deal with fundamental biotech funds, right? And I have to say that, and with all respect for those guys, they're some of the most skeptical people I've ever met in my life. So
Really?
they'll pull apart the data with a fine tooth comb. They'll pull apart the IP with a fine tooth comb. They've been down this road before. They understand
Yeah.
when drugs can fail because of bad data, or markets can get disrupted when there's not good IP. So I'm sure that there's some very sophisticated investors looking at that. And again, my background's been in drug development for over 30 years. I've interacted with a lot of these funds for a long time, and that's what they're looking for. Differentiated
Yeah.
products, good data integrity. You've got to run your studies very well, and IP.
Yeah. How long have you had your eye on small pharma? Because I'm sure this acquisition was not done overnight, but is it something you've had your eye on for a couple of years?
It's been a while that we've been having conversations and building relationship and trust.
Yeah.
When you have founders that have put a lot of their own personal time and effort and energy,
Yeah.
a lot of their many years, 8 years of their lives into a project, it becomes very personal. And so I think that to be successful in any kind of partnership like that, merger, acquisition, whatever you want to call it, combination, there's got to be trust there. So yeah, it takes a little while to build that trust. It's not just something that happened overnight.
How much did it come into play too? Because let's face it, in this industry, I think a lot of companies kind of second guess, did we go public a little too soon and they run out of cash? But Small Pharma was trading on the TSX Venture, and now you're on the New York Stock Exchange. So when you look at a lot of this IP, like I would assume, like a lot of institutions, it's not investable because of the exchanges it's on. So how much does the New York Stock Exchange, with you being there, how much did that play a game or a part of it?
I mean, it was an important part of our plan from day one. We did go public, first of all, on the Neo Exchange in Canada, now the Chicago Exchange. But getting to the US exchange was really important. It was a bit of a
Yeah.
scramble and a race. And frankly, we got there in August of 21, really just as the sector kind of started to lose its fizz. And we just got there in time, I think. And it's been tremendous. I mean, not only massive liquidity, we trade in volume terms more than all of our competitors, peers combined. But the Amex obviously doesn't have a $1 limit either, which is given where share price is trading, that's a good thing. Yeah, look, I think small pharma, as we said, has fantastic DMT data, and I think that it didn't get the reaction from investors that it may perhaps could have done. And I think part of that is potentially because they were trading on a small exchange with very little
Yeah.
trading volume, and that makes it very difficult for institutions to invest.
Yeah, I hear you. Great acquisition Cboe made with Neo Exchange, that's for sure. They're in 26 markets, so can't be forgotten. So access to investors eventually in Europe, North America, and Australia, which are big markets for this industry. But listen, I know you're a busy person. I'll let you run, but I appreciate the update. And we'll keep in touch and look forward to obviously catching back up with you towards the end of the year as we hear about these readouts and what we can expect next.
Sounds good, Chad. Look forward to coming back and sharing it all. Thanks.
Yeah, that should be a big day for the industry. Appreciate it, Doug.
Thank you.
So what'd you all think of the interview? Did you like what we recorded with our guests? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you thought of it. And if there's any more questions you want us to ask, as usual, share this video with your network. Click on that bell for all notifications. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.